You know the "you are here" signs? Well, we try to let everyone know where Ole Miss is right now in the transfer portal. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media at Yahoo Sports. Today on the show, we talk about where Ole Miss currently sits in the transfer portal and what will probably happen next. Will Ole Miss score a visit from Miami Hurricanes transfer Jayden Wayne, and why that might be something that Ole Miss fans should at least keep an eye on? Two running backs that Ole Miss was committed to other schools over the weekend. So is Ole Miss done? Is there another back to watch? Ole Miss received a commitment over the weekend from Hayden Bradley out of Buford, Georgia. And the NFL draft was this weekend, and it's no longer about the players getting picked. It's become the most fake, over-rehearsed propaganda video in history. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. Also, around the 4th of July, I am going to be in Mississippi in that I-20 corridor for a short period of time. If anybody would be interested in a meet and greet night somewhere in the Jackson area, shoot me a DM on Twitter if that is something you might be interested in. I've got a little bit of time to figure that out, but we need to start now if we're going to figure it out. Also, there's still time to join the Grove Collective and see Jaxson Dart and Eli Manning on May 6th. Go to thegrovecollective.com and join today. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go. It's the mobile hit classic on the classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or at Google Play. So just kind of resetting where Ole Miss is this weekend, some stuff happened. And one of the things that happened is Dillon Edwards, the running back out of Colorado, committed to his home state school. He committed to Kansas State. I think he played high school football in the town where Kansas State is. So it's truly a hometown type place. And Kansas State does have experience with smallish running backs when you look at Darren Sproles and Deuce Vaughn. So they've handled that historically over the past 20 years. So I can see that as well. Although I still contend Dillon Edwards under Lane Kiffin would have been one of the most explosive things that anybody has ever seen. But he's going to Kansas State. That's good for him as well. Now, Trent Howland, the running back out of Indiana, he is set to go to Oklahoma State. Remember, I've talked over and over again that Ole Miss is looking for players to fill roles, not holes. Trent Howland probably is filling a hole kind of at Oklahoma State. Now, I realize they have some talent there as well, but they do not have the logjam at running back that Ole Miss has as well. So what happens next, especially at running back? Does Ole Miss need another running back? Is Jacory Croskey Merritt worthy of that position? Is he the thumper? I'm doing air quotes right now. The thumper for this Ole Miss offense in the absence of Logan Diggs. He's 205, 210 pounds. He's not the largest running back in the world, but he could fill that role. And when you have Henry Parrish Jr. coming in, he's going to fill a Henry Parrish type role as well. Just a normal type thing. We know exactly what we can expect from him. And then you have the plus Jerry and Ely type running back of Ulysses Bentley IV stepping in as well. That's kind of where the Ole Miss running back room sits at the moment. I've heard mentions of another running back, but we have to wait and see if there's a visit or if anything happens, if there's any movement that way. I will pay more attention to that. But the fact of the matter is he has not been brought up on this show, and that's intentional. So we will see at the running back position. Ole Miss has a chance to be perfectly fine. And I said last week that if Ole Miss added no other player in the running back room, this is a top 5 offense in the country. So I think that was Friday's show, and I meant that. Ole Miss's offense is in unbelievably good shape. They're just looking for people to fill roles. Trent Howland would fill a role as a 6'3", 240-pound running back. But if you don't get it, you don't get it. And that is fine. They still have talent in other places and a way to be extremely explosive. Now, other positions, we talked about Tyler Barron, and we talked about how in the video about Tyler Barron that Miami was a school to watch for because they needed defensive linemen and they had money to spend. So pay attention to Tyler Barron to Miami. So that means that Ole Miss has a potential predicament on their hand if they need another defensive end edge type player, if they want that, because the best player in the defensive line room right now, I contend, is Tyler Barron. But if Tyler Barron does not work out, if for whatever reason that divorce, that breakup in January was irreconcilable, you do need another direction you can go. And a person that I think that Ole Miss could look at, we were sitting there talking on our Discord server about players and the edge that transferred out of Miami. Again, there was that circulation of Miami and Ole Miss that just kind of happened in this whole spring transfer portal window. You have Jayden Wayne. Jayden Wayne currently, he is a Washington edge. Now, this is a situation, in my opinion, similar to how Deuce Edwards goes. The odds of this happening are not high. But this was brought up to me. They're trying to get in is about as far as anybody has said, and they said that on our Discord server. But Miami transfer edge Jayden Wayne is exploring visits in UCLA, Cal, Pitt, and Kansas. Steve Wiltfong reported today. A source confirmed to On3, the former top 100 prospect will visit Washington this weekend. He is from Washington. They are going to be the big leader, and he could probably commit at any point in time in the near future, that being a home state type school. Okay, so keep that in mind. But as an edge, he didn't have the greatest stats, but he has a lot of eligibility. He's a former top 100 player, and because of that, he is somebody that can fit in and do the things that an edge might be required to do at Ole Miss. Really interesting. If you look at his numbers, 4 solo tackles. I think he had 13 total, a half sack on the year. He's out of Tacoma, 6'6", 245 pounds. But him going from Washington to Miami, he might just be homesick. Okay. So this working or not working, you can't really judge it. And I'm just saying it's probably an avenue that we should keep an eye on and see what's up, because according to our Discord server, they said that this is a name that maybe we should watch. So I'm going to pay attention to it as well. I mean, pretty impressed about what can happen on the Discord server. They've been pretty good of calling out names early and all of that as well. So I'm pretty fired up about where that can go. The running back position, going back to that for a second, they might decide to just stick around, just stay exactly where they are. It might be a situation to where we can see exactly what this running back room is going to look like. And it honestly looks more like it did in 2020 and 2021 than we expected it would be, with Jacory Croskey Merritt being the Snoop Conner type running back. He is 210 pounds, 205 pounds. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Now, David Johnson did say that some point this week, he expects another player to get into the transfer portal. He did not elaborate on that. Okay. So I am expecting another player to get in, but Amorian Walker is going back into the transfer portal. He could end up at Tulane, LSU, Michigan. Who knows? But I am not going to fret over Amorian Walker. Amorian Walker is famous, and the reason we were all excited is because of a 3-cone drill. Pretty much the same drill, if you think about it, is the reason they voted down on DK Metcalf. I'm not saying the guy isn't freakishly athletic or a good football player. I'm saying that he is more known for potential right now than he is for actually being a football player. He might get it. He might be a first-round NFL pick. He might be everything, okay? I'm not saying that is off the table for him, but he hasn't done it yet. It's the same stuff whenever we talk about Kedrick Reesano, about what he can be running the football. He just hasn't done it. You don't have that sample size that you can pull from to make it a predictive thing. Amorian Walker's in that same boat as well. I heard that I think Cedric Beavers and Chris Graves had a pretty good spring at cornerback. And of course, you have Trey Amos, who is a dude on the outside as well. So this defensive cornerback situation, while they might need another one, maybe it's a situation where Yam Banks or John Saunders or somebody that can move over did, because Ole Miss has a ton of cornerbacks on their roster. If you look at exactly the way it's set up right now, I don't think you can do that, because if you're looking for a fourth cornerback, I think John Saunders could do that, and I think he could do it well. I think that Yam Banks could do it as well. Those players are at the disposal, and they are at the talent to be a fourth cornerback in the Ole Miss system. So if needed, Ole Miss has the personnel already in-house to do what's necessary, in my opinion. We'll see. Ole Miss might decide in the transfer portal to go after somebody. Maybe not. Who knows exactly? But I am pretty fired up about exactly everything on that as well. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. Hayden Bradley has committed to Ole Miss, and we get to know this young man. All right, game off, okay? We got to pause here and talk a little bit more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You've already talked about that, but there's so much good stuff in this game to talk about, everyone. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build each other's boards up. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. Then there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with your friends to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunting your friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenge. A ton of their own unique mini games like digging for treasures or robot pachinko machine. There's always a new timed event that will help you win big, like the massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover on Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all that screaming and shouting? Make the switch over to Locked On Sports today, a free 24-hour sports streaming channel program for you every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team, every single day. Ole Miss got a commitment from Hayden Bradley over the weekend, and they also had a really big high school recruiting official visit weekend. It's really interesting with this coaching staff. For whatever reason, it's either transfer portal or high school recruiting. They do a decent job of compartmentalizing both, and this weekend was a high school recruiting weekend, and they got the commitment from Hayden Bradley. And he is a tight end out of Buford, Georgia, and he's a good tight end out of Buford, Georgia. He's a 3-star on 3, and I think composite-wise, but he has the ability to move up the charts pretty good. I don't know exactly why on 3 and 247 they haven't rated this kid yet, because he's a good tight end at a football factory. Now, one little dirty little secret about On 3 and Rivals and 247 Sports and those guys is high schools like Buford, you don't underrate those players usually. You usually underrate them at your own peril because you want access to the program. You want to get in there because you know that next year there's also 3 or 4 more players that you're going to need to pay it forward on. So they usually overrank Buford high school players. That's just the way it works. It's not fair, but it's just the truth. Hayden Bradley is underranked. Whenever I watch his video and the smoothness of which him catching the ball and running routes and doing stuff that a normal tight end does, it is interesting that he is rated this low. Now, maybe it's a situation as simple as they mainly rate tight ends as flex tight ends now, and that a true tight end, he looks a little slower, he looks a little bit more lethargic, things like that. But in this real world, to where a tight end is a full type player that can do everything, you look at what Caden Prieskorn did in the Peach Bowl, making his catches, and you saw exactly what a real full-time tight end could be. The flex tight ends that play out wide, they're great. They're jumbo wide receivers, essentially. Think the Evan Ingram type player. But a true full tight end is such a matchup problem. It's one of the reasons that I think that 12 personnel absolutely needs to happen on this football team. When you take a Caden Prieskorn and you mix it with a Dae'quan Wright and you picture exactly what this team could look like and do, it's interesting. Now, Dae'quan Wright is more of a flex tight end than a hand-down normal tight end like Caden Prieskorn. But he can play with his hand in the dirt. He can make the blocking. He has been working on it for 2 years. I talked to him on this show, and he told me what blocking was like at Virginia Tech and how much he worked to basically pick that up. So 12 personnel with this running back group, maybe you add a little bit of beef. Maybe you don't need to get a 6'3", 240-pound running back. Maybe that isn't the cards. Maybe you go 12 personnel and take the running back that you have and use the beef in the extra tight end as opposed to the running back. Maybe that's the play moving forward for Ole Miss in the transfer portal. Maybe you go find that blocking tight end that we talked about earlier in this transfer portal window. Maybe you go out and get a bigger wide receiver that can fill a role. Another player that is similar to what Kerry Johnson was at Ole Miss in the early 2000s, if everybody remembers that name. Somebody that was physical, that would just body you up, that was an ultimate team guy. Maybe that's the play moving forward. But it sure looks like Ole Miss, through the high school rank and through the transfer portal, they're doing a number on the tight end position at the moment. When you look at this room, you have Caden Prieskorn and Dae'quan Wright, okay? Those are probably the top two players on the roster. Then you have Hudson Wolfe, who got a lot of playing time a year ago, and good for Hudson for getting back, by the way. It was nice to see him on the football field. Let's see if he puts on weight and does some of the stuff that is necessary. He's a 6'7" tight end. He has a chance to be an absolute weapon. Then you have players that transferred out like Kyron Heath and Javante Connor. They transferred out. Incoming Dillon Hipp, okay, out of Arizona. Good football player, real similar to Hayden Bradley. And Hayden Bradley gets brought in as well. That's 4 potential scholarship players each year, because after Caden Prieskorn is gone this year, you bring in the other one and you're still 4 deep in that room. I think going 12 personnel is not just a luxury piece for Ole Miss football. Now, you have Jordan Watkins, you have Caden Lee, you have Trey Harris, you have Deion Smith, you have Aiden Williams, you have Nareel White, you have a lot of pieces, Marquise Willis, a lot of pieces in the wide receiver position. And people might say, are you willing to take one of them off the field? And I think situationally, I talked about this last week, that Ole Miss, I think, wants to be able to play slow just because they can. They are at the point where they are talented enough to do it. They don't need the gimmick all of the time. Now, all the time, it might work whenever they go super duper fast, but it takes away some of the complexity of the offense going super fast. The offense can become a little bit more complex if you add a little bit of time and playing a little bit slower. And we have been wondering for several weeks about Ole Miss being able to play 4-minute offense football. Whenever you're up by 14 points against Kentucky, do you have the ability to take the air out of the game? That is the interesting part for this. I think Hayden Bradley is an example of somebody that could grow into it. He has all of the pass catching ability and all of the movements to be honestly an elite tight end at Ole Miss. A guy that in 3 years you're looking up and it's like, okay, we have Hayden Bradley, so we're fine at that position. He has a chance to be that good. But whenever you look at the offense as a whole and Ole Miss's investment in tight ends, and I said investment intentionally, you can see that playing super fast isn't always the motivation anymore. The talent has gotten to the point where I think Ole Miss wants to play a little bit more like Georgia, to where they can go super fast and completely shove it down your throat and go so quickly with all those talented players, just overwhelm you. And they can slow it down and just slowly beat you into a pulp. I think Ole Miss eventually can get to that point. And I think a player like Hayden Bradley is an example of a way that Ole Miss can get there as well. Thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. I tried to watch the NFL draft. I really did. But it was bad on every single channel I checked, and it wasn't the players' fault. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slam dunks to home runs to slap shots, all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Right now, I think it's plus 122 for Ole Miss to make the 2024 college football playoff. That's about a probability of 54%. You can bet on that. You can bet on a whole bunch of stuff. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Game Time is now an authorized marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Talk about any good deals. I'll talk about my game that I went on Monday night. I saw the Detroit Tigers play the Tampa Bay Rays. I got tickets on the Game Time app. And what I wanted was the sweet left-handed swing view. And I wanted to look and be in a position to where I could see that at its best. Detroit only comes to Tampa Bay once a year. I wanted to make it count. I saw Tarek Schoolball pitch. I saw the Tigers win, and I saw some long balls, and it was pretty cool. You know, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available in the free Fire TV channels app. Be part of history. Really interesting stuff. This past weekend was NFL draft weekend, and they've literally just ruined this event. It used to be not a great event, but a good event. Back when it was in Radio City Music Hall, it was only on ESPN. And what it was about players getting picked and being distributed to teams. That's what it was about. It was all about whether or not this player is a good fit for that team. That was the whole thing. That's the reason it was on ESPN. But now it's on ESPN. It's on ABC. It's on the NFL Network. Heck, it might be on another network as well. So it has grown way out. And the NFL has taken basically the route of no longer doing it in New York City like they used to. Now they've turned it into a traveling event where they count attendance. And I think Detroit had over 700,000 people over the course of a weekend, breaking Nashville's record. That is very similar to me to the SEC always talking about how many credentials they send out at media days. It just doesn't matter. And this Detroit draft and everything is turned into one of the most fake, most over-rehearsed propaganda videos in the history of the world. You have cameras of people trying on hats. Yes, the player's getting drafted, but the whole purpose of that is the hat so that you can sell hats to other people. You have a 45-minute walk to where they're walking to the stage. There's a pre-rehearsed scream or hug or something going on with the commissioner, and he gets their jerseys, and you talk about something's going on about you getting here. Oh, which, by the way, my favorite video interview of the weekend, I don't know who it was, but maybe it was an LSU player. And it's like, how did you get here was the question, just basically talking about, hey, how did you make it from junior high football all the way to the NFL draft? That was the question. But what they heard is like, where are you coming from? And the person said Baton Rouge. And it was hilarious. And it was just the most perfect answer in the history of answers. But the whole thing is just non-expected. The picks get put on the back burner. And sometimes they go back to back because of all the other stuff they're doing. They're doing things other than the pick to try and, I don't know, make it more than it is. Now, the main thing is congratulations to DeAndre Prince, Cedric Johnson, and Dejon Anthony. Absolutely congratulations to those players. That's the biggest day of their life. But if you watch the broadcast and you're watching what's going on, that's not the case. It's not the case. And it completely works in contrast of players that are opting out of bowl games because they're not important to them in order to increase their draft stock, and then they go in the 6th round. Why did they opt out of the game? If you're going in the 1st round, yeah, I agree with it. Absolutely. If you're going to go in the later, if you're a day 3 pick, there is no excuse to opt out unless you just didn't want to play. We're not talking about generational wealth at that point. We're talking about if he gets cut in training camp this year, he could be working somewhere doing normal job type stuff. It was a situation where playing in that bowl game probably would have helped him out a little bit. Playing against a blue blood would have helped. When you look at DeAndre Prince, he played in the game. When you look at Dejon Anthony, he played in the game. But when the next bowl game happens, you're going to hear about opt-outs about, hey, we need to do it. It's the biggest day of my life coming up. Okay. It's kind of like the person that says, hey, I always bet on myself. Well, cool. It's like I say, if you bet on yourself, be prepared to lose because that happens from time to time. This draft has become completely unwatchable. Since they changed the format and whatever's going on, the personalities and what they're discussing, they're talking about value picks. There's no such thing as a value pick. They're just people that say, okay, we need to pay this much money for this position. They're talking about all of that. But what you need to do is draft people that can make your team better. If you do that and you do that enough, you'll end up winning a Super Bowl. And it doesn't matter if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Kansas City Chiefs, or the San Francisco 49ers. But if you try and do what everybody else is doing and you're taking the 6th quarterback of the 1st round, it's probably going to backfire on you. And you're going to end up doing this exact same thing in 3 years. And maybe that's the goal, because at least this show has hours and hours to talk about in this propaganda circus that the NFL is running right now. Anyway, thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen. We have the most perspective surrounding Ole Miss sports and is one of the many reasons we're the #1 Ole Miss podcast out there. And thank you for that. But for your second listen, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports today, now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. And for those of you on YouTube, we'll send you there right now. Howdy toddy, everyone.